my blissful shallows. Let us know in brief about humanity, that is Manushyatva. So, what is humanity? Humanity means destroying animalism. So, which are the animals? So, animals are those who have gross body consciousness. Usually, it has been said, ahara nidra bhayamaithunancha samanyametat pashubhirnaranam ज्ञानमयितेषाम् अधिको विशेषः ज्ञानेन हीनाः पशुभिः समानाः. That means food, sleep, fear, and sexual indulgence are common to animals and man. The animals eat food, man also eats food. The animals go to sleep, man also goes to sleep. The animals have a fear and man also have a fear. The animals involve in sexual indulgence and man also involves in sexual indulgence. So there is no difference at all between man and animals. So these are common to animals as well as man. Not only that, man is inferior to animals in taking food, going to sleep, having fear, and involving in sexual indulgence. The animals take the raw food material, and in the raw food material there is the ample quantity. So there are the ample quantity of nutrients, the salts, and the vitamins. So there is no deficiency of nutrients, salts, and the vitamins in the raw food material. So that is how. So there is maximum immunity power in case of the animals. As there is maximum immunity power, so there will be very few number of diseases to the animals. But what man does, the man takes the raw food materials and he boils them. When he boils them, half of the nutrients, the salts and the vitamins are burned. Then not only that, man roasts the food materials. When he roasts the food materials, so the nutrients, the salts and the vitamins that have been present in the food will be burnt, and 75% of these nutrients, salts, and the vitamins will be burnt. Not only that, man fries them. When man fries them, so all the nutrients, all the salts and all the vitamins have been burnt completely. By this, man loses the immunity power to the maximum extent. And when the immunity power has been lost, he suffers from deficiency diseases because in the fried food or roasted boiled food, so there will be no ample quantity of nutrients, salts, and the so-called vitamins. So you will be suffering from maximum number of deficiency diseases. So in this way, he is inferior to animals in taking food. All animals sleep, but man doesn't get sleep. Man doesn't get sleep because he has maximum number of desires of sensory objects. And then about fear. Animals doesn't fear much. So they can go to the, during night, they can go to the burial ground and they can graze the grass there. And they will have a sound sleep in the burial ground. Later, they will be in a position to return to their respective places. But man, he will not go out of his house. So during night. And not only that, if he goes to the burial ground in the night, so he will be in a position to lose his life due to the fear of ghosts in the burial ground. So in this way, man is inferior to animals in case of fear. Then let us think about the sexual indulgence. The animals involved in sexual indulgence only during estrus. But man involved in sexual indulgence when there is no estrus. He involves in sexual indulgence, but he doesn't want to have children. So in this way, man is inferior to animals in sexual indulgence. So all the plans of man are only for food and for sexual indulgence. If man has to get food, so he has to cultivate the land. He has to plow the land. And he has to remove the garbage. He has to clean the soil. Then sow the seeds in it. Then he has to grow them. And later he has to sprinkle the poison to them. And he has to harvest them. But what the animals do, they directly go to the field and they eat the grains. Man gets the water, from Krishna river, from Ganges, like that. So the animals and the birds will go directly to the pond, directly to the brook, directly to the river, and they can drink the water. And by birds, by their beak, they will be in a position to sprinkle the water and they will have the bath. The animals can go inside the water of ponds, brooks, or rivers, and they will have their bath like that. But man has to get the drinking water, he digs the well and constructs it. He digs the pond and constructs it. And he constructs the reservoirs like that. You will be in a position to dig the borewell. He constructs the tank like that. But the animals and birds, they go directly to the pond, to the brook, to the rivers, to the reservoirs, and they drink the water, they bathe in that water like that. So the animals and birds, they construct their nests just to protect them from the bright sunlight, from cold, from rain, from wind, like that. And man, to protect him from bright sunlight, from cold, from rain, and from wind, large palatial buildings. And he will be living in it. So animal life is so easy to lead. But the animals and birds, they take their food and water in our house. The animals and birds live in our house. They drink the water from our house. They eat the grain or the grains food in our house. They involve these sparrows, they involve in sexual indulgence in our house. And the young ones of the sparrows, so they will be born and they will be growing in our house. When the wings will be grown, so the young sparrows fly away, leaving their parents like that. So the bird life or the animal life is so easy to lead. But a man, he has to take care of his children. He has to take care of grandchildren, etc. The birds, early in the morning, so they will be chirping by singing. When they will be in a position to sing, they chirp. And even the dogs and cats, so there will be plunging. So they will be playing with each other. But in case of man, the man is not in a position to love each other. But a man hates, one man hates the other man. Like that. But the man has the power of reason. That means he can know which is happiness and which is unhappiness. And he can know what is the self and what is the non-self. But the animals and birds have not been in a position to have the power of reason. They cannot reason out which is happiness and which is unhappiness. They cannot reason out which is the self and which is the non-self. The man has the power of reason to know what is happiness and what is unhappiness, what is self and what is non-self. But he has not been in a position to make use of the power of reason to know what is happiness, what is unhappiness, to know what is self and non-self. So in this way, he is quite inferior to the birds and the beasts. So when there is body consciousness, gross body consciousness, so there will be the need of food. We require food. Then we will be engaged in many more activities, and these activities end in tiresomeness and weariness, and this leads to sound sleep. So when there is a gross body consciousness, we need food, we need sleep. And when there is body consciousness, there is fear. In sleep, there is no body consciousness and there is no fear. And when there is body consciousness, there is the sexual desire of sexual indulgence. And all these are there. So if body consciousness would be there, so all four are needed. The food, the sleep, the fear is there, and the sexual indulgence. You may live in the house, in a village, in a town, or in a city. So you are in need of food, sleep, fear, and the desire of sexual indulgence. But if you leave the house, or the village, town, or the city, and if you go to the forest, there also you have the body consciousness. There also you require food. You need deep sleep. You will have fear. And you will have the desire to involve in a sexual indulgence. So to be happy, you may live inside in the house, in the village, town or city. Or you may live in the forest. But if at all you have to become happy, what you have to do is you have to remove the desire of sensory objects, thinking that they are the givers of happiness. And if we have to experience permanent happiness, we have to transcend our body consciousness. So these are the two factors which have been responsible for unhappiness of all living beings. So you may live in the house in the village, or you may live in the forest, but you have to remove the desire of sensory objects, thinking that they are the givers of happiness. And you have to transcend the gross body consciousness. So marrying or unmarrying is indifferent, altogether different. Leading a married life is altogether different. One may be married or unmarried. He can experience permanent happiness. If we can remove the desires of sensory objects, thinking that they are the givers of happiness, and transcend gross body consciousness. So, in this way, if at all we have to experience permanent happiness, so man has got the power of reason of knowing which is happiness and which is unhappiness. When we will be in a position to remember the sensory objects, so there will be the contact of sensory objects. If we will be in a position to remember any type of sweet, then what we do now? We go to the shop and we eat the sweet. That means when we remember the sensory objects, so there will be contact of the sensory objects. So when there will be contact of sensory objects, so there arises the desire. So we can enjoy the sensory objects daily. Always we can enjoy. That means there arises the desire to enjoy the sensory objects. If anybody will be in a position to become an obstacle to get the desired sensory object, so there arises the anger on him. So like this, when we will be in a position to remember the sensory objects, so there will be desire, kama. There will be the anger. So if anybody will be an obstacle to get the desired sensory object, so there will be anger. Kama, krodha. Then when we begin to enjoy the sensory objects, so for every glass of food, we think that the sweet gives us happiness. Sweet is happiness. Sweet is happiness. So this will result in a craziness of the sensory objects, and there will be greed. Greed for the sensory objects. When man will be in a position to enjoy the sensory objects, if he will be in a position to enjoy more number of sensory objects, so there arises the egoism. I am the only person and I have been in a position to enjoy maximum number of sensory objects like that. Then if anyone will be enjoying the sensory objects more than him, so there arises the jealousy. Like that, the enemies, usually we think that the enemies are outside us. But our enemies are not outside, they are inside our mind. The desire, the anger, the craziness, the greed, the egoism, the jealousy are inside our mind. So for all these 6 enemies, the main enemy is the desire. That is, the understanding that the sensory objects are givers of happiness. Even the enemies are outside us. The enemies are outside us because so we have been in a position to quarrel with each other for the sake of sensory objects. So the enemies will be outside because so there will be quarreling, fighting for the sensory objects. So the understanding that the sensory objects are givers of happiness, definitely there will be outside enemies. Like this, the enemies can be inside our mind and outside also. When we think that the sensory objects are givers of happiness, and we have gross body consciousness. So it is immaterial whether one lives in the house of the village or town or the city, or if one lives in the forest, or one is married or unmarried. So it is immaterial whether he lives in the house or he lives in the forest. Whether he is married or unmarried, it is immaterial. But if at all the married or the unmarried, man living in the house or in the forest will be permanently happy when he will be in a position to give up the desires of sensory objects, thinking that they are givers of happiness, and transcending the gross body consciousness. He may live in the house or in the forest. He may be married or unmarried. He will be in a position to experience permanent happiness. So, if at all we have to experience permanent happiness, we have to give up the desire of sensory objects, thinking that they are the givers of happiness, and we have to transcend our gross body consciousness. So we'll continue about knowing humanity or the Manushyatva in the next lecture. So by this, I end my talk.